Hello, everyone. This is Al Moriello of the 49ers Plus podcast, a bit different format to start today. Before we get into 49er talk, week one, and a season preview, I just wanted to take a minute or two to honor and remember our family dog, Charlie, who yesterday, September 6th, on a Friday, we had to put down. He left us. He has been dealing with heart failure or heart murmurs, and he's been on heart medicine for the past 5 years. The past couple days, it progressed. He was having trouble walking, having trouble breathing. So yesterday on Friday morning, our vet was closed. So I took him to a nearby animal hospital who we've been to before. Actually, a year ago, we took him there and found that he had, in addition to, borderline heart failure at that time, a mass in his chest, which was very upsetting. They couldn't tell if it was cancer because they couldn't put him under anesthesia given his heart situation. So, as a family, we knew that the clock was ticking, and we never knew if, this was the day or the week or the month that it was going to happen. And over time, his symptoms of heart failure and whatnot progressed. He had to be put on a diuretic to help get fluid out of his lungs. That was new as of late spring, early summer. And that's just as the symptom progresses, as the condition progresses. Charlie was a Cavalier King Charles Spaniel, black and tan, not exactly the same breed, but looked like Lady from the Disney animated movie Lady and the Tramp, and such a sweet boy and a sweet personality. Always wanted to be near us, wanted to be cuddling by us, whoever was sitting down. He just wanted to be near us and really good with our two children. Charlie was what started our family for my wife and I, being 14. He's older than my two children, 12 and 9. So when we got him 3 years into our marriage, we never viewed him as a pet. He was our fur baby. He was our first, and he started our family. And anybody that knows us or has seen us and been around us with him, that's listening, knows how much we doted on him and how important he was to us and such a big part of our family, and how much we obviously loved him. Yesterday, I was at the hospital all day with him. My wife and kids were working. I called my wife and let her know what was happening. I didn't tell her everything initially because I didn't want her worrying so much as she was driving down with the kids. But I knew early on, maybe around 12 or 1 o'clock, how bad it was. They had to put him in like a fully closed off crate to give him oxygen. They really upped his medicine to get the fluid out of his lungs. And then the situation that was presented to us was, we can keep him overnight and see if we can get the fluid out of the lungs, really pump him up with the diuretic, but that could damage his kidneys further, which were already damaged since he's been on this medicine for a couple months. Blood levels, urine levels, urine tests confirm that. And then there was no guarantee that it would work. And in a subsequent x-ray to see how the fluid was dissipating based on this medicine, approximately 50% of the fluid was gone, but it allowed the doctors to see that his lungs were kind of riddled with tumors. So he had lung cancer on top of that was causing him difficulty to breathe, which was why the reason that we put him in. When we put him in, they put him in the oxygen crate. He looked better. He was breathing normally, but the minute that you took him out for just a quick walk or even carrying him, we saw how labored the breathing was, and it made the decision so difficult for us because of how much he perked up and looked good in that oxygen enriched environment. But we made the decision as a family with our two small children, went into the car outside, talked it over, cried a lot before the decision, during the decision, after the decision, and the day after, still today. anybody that has a dog, and I'm sure there are a lot of people out there that have pets, how much they become part of your family. For me, Charlie was actually my third dog. I had a dog my senior year of college for 5 or 6 months before the landlord found out about it, Bailey. And she had to go. And then before we got Charlie, my wife and I wound up adopting a boxer, a rescue, I guess 14-ish years ago. And it was an older dog, maybe 5, 6, or 7 years old, who was emaciated when he came to us. So we kept him over the summer and had to resurrender him because he had food aggression, or toys, anything that he had. If anyone tried to grab it from him or take away, he got very aggressive. And we didn't have children yet at that point, and that was a strong reason why we had to, resurrender him, and that was very, very difficult to do. And serendipitously, we heard about this breed, Cavalier King Charles Spaniels, from one of my wife's good friends. The day that we dropped him off back down in Philadelphia, we called the breeder that we got a recommendation from, and they had just had a litter. And that's how we kind of stumbled upon Charlie, serendipitously. So the other thing about yesterday, September 6th, it was his birthday. He was 14. So the idea of, ending your dog's life, even though it was peacefully on his birthday, while it has some sort of symmetry to it, it was hard. And what we wanted to do and we made peace with was he actually tore his ACL about a little over a month ago. So he wasn't walking good, but he always put on like a happy face. Like he was a very happy boy. Didn't show us that he was in pain and was probably like powering through the breathing and not being able to walk well. So we bought him like a stroller. And it was actually a stroller for kids because he was big for his breed. So he wasn't fitting in like the normal dog strollers that you may see like a Chihuahua in, or a really small dog, because he was, 31, 32 pounds. So we found a normal stroller for him, and we would walk him around the neighborhood. We walked him down the Jersey Shore when we were on vacation there twice this summer, just so he can walk and be out. He would walk a little bit, get tired, go in the stroller, and just be happy to be seeing people. And since yesterday was his birthday, we wanted to give him that one last time. So there was a nearby Petco within walking distance. So I went over to buy a little chew toy or a squeaky toy gift for him. And I borrowed one of their shopping carts. And in the other direction nearby was an outdoor mall. So we took him out. He still had his IV thing in his leg. Put him in the cart, and we walked him around the outdoor mall so he can see people and feel like he was out. And we wanted to give him something, and I know it was a lot for us, but something on his birthday too. There was an ice cream place there. He had chocolate ice cream for the first time in his life. The kids picked vanilla and chocolate, and he gobbled it up and was putting his head in it. And we took a lot of pictures and videos of him, and he was happy. And then we brought him back for the procedure. As you can see, I'm kind of getting a little emotional with it. And just to close, like for me as an N of one, I mean, I obviously know how much he meant to our family, my wife, the kids, everybody. I've been working from home since COVID. So March 2020. So for the past 4.5 months, he has been the mammal, the person, the thing that I've been around most in those 4 years. My little brown and black shadow. So that's going to be tough. That's going to be tough moving forward. As anybody that have pets or have lost a pet knows. But I didn't mean to take up this much time. And I'm going to put a timestamp in the beginning just so if people don't want to hear this, they can jump right to the 49er stuff. But we love you, Charlie. We always will. We're glad you're not suffering anymore. And we miss you. You were the best boy.
Montana looking. Throwing in the end zone. Caught it! Montana. Touchdown, John Taylor.
Young to the air. Young to Jerry Rice. Touchdown, San Francisco.
Young stumbles on the way back and fires up the middle. Pass is caught by Owens.
Let's talk Niners.
So let's start with a quick rundown. We're going to be talking Deebo's cap hits, injuries, including to Christian McCaffrey, team captains. We're going to give a season outlook, positional breakdown, some stat predictions, record prediction, and then preview the Monday night game against the Jets. So let's start at the top with Deebo's future cap hit numbers. So after Deebo restructured his contract last week or earlier this past week, his 2024 cap hit went from $28.6 million down to $12.2 million, so a $16.4 million savings. And that led a lot of us to wonder, okay, is it ballooning in 2025 and 2026? Is it going to make Deebo more or less likely to remain on the roster? Independent of my thoughts of Deebo being traded, what is a fact is next year is a contract year for Deebo, and he may, take a stance of sitting out, not wanting to participate in anything, not wanting to play for the Niners until he gets an extension or is traded, because why risk injury, right, on the final year of a contract? Well, his cap number in 2025 also helps out the 49ers. It goes from 24.2 to 15.9. So that's about an $8 million decrease in the cap. 2026 is a void year, but the hit balloons to $33 million. 2027 to 2029 are void years also, but there are no cap hits in those years. So it's really, does the 2025 cap number of 15.9 make Deebo more enticing for a team to want to trade for him? I mean, if there was trade talk last offseason, when Deebo was going to get the extension, this offseason with Ayuk wanting an extension, I'm sure there's going to be trade talk this upcoming offseason because Deebo's going to want an extension himself. So the Niner drama of will they, won't they keep certain players is not going to go away. And, just to be clear on this, they don't need to trade Deebo to keep Purdy. The Niners have $60+ million in cap room. They're about, I think, $20 million over the 2025 cap. So they're going to have $40 million in cap space to work with before signing Brock to an extension, which again could be as little as $15 to $20 million cap hit the first year. And actually, 2025, year one is the last year of his rookie deal, which is still only about $1 million cap hit. So we don't know how much they're going to pile on to that first year. He already has a cap hit in 2025. I'm sure they'll add something to it, but then what does 2026 look like in 2027, which I maintain will still be pretty manageable. So the Deebo situation, obviously more to come on that, but frees up money for a team that's going to be looking to roll over a whole lot this year into next year. And if that number kind of stands firm, they might be, when all is said and done, about $40 million under the 2025 cap. Now, injuries, the biggest one coming back, Christian McCaffrey was listed as a calf/Achilles strain. This was mentioned a month ago in training camp, beginning of August. He was ruled out of any preseason game, Everybody is antsy, right? Because we just saw Dre Greenlaw. He had an Achilles designation for the last month or two of the season. And he winds up touring his Achilles, obviously, in the Super Bowl, just running/bouncing onto the field. Now, we can all be squeamish about, that's what happened to Greenlaw, and Kevin Durant had that calf strain, Achilles strain, wound up touring his Achilles in the finals when he was with Golden State. So you can draw that parallel of for Christian McCaffrey, but the difference being with Greenlaw and Durant, they played through that injury or that strain. McCaffrey's rested it for a month. He just got back to practice, and he was a limited practice participant, this past Tuesday. So that'll help. And Christian McCaffrey came out and said, oh, if there was a game in beginning of August, a regular season game, he would have played through it. And that might, who knows, but that would be more similar, right, to Greenlaw and Durant trying to play through their calf or Achilles strains during their respective seasons. Are they going to watch usage? McCaffrey was asked about that. He hopes not. I think Shanahan, well before this happened, in the offseason said they could do a better job of watching McCaffrey's usage. And I've said it many a podcast, and I'll repeat it now. Look, Greenlaw, a wild non-contact injury, not even during a game, just going out onto the field between, a punt, or causing a punt or going back on defense. The ultimate in non-contact injuries, right? An injury can happen at any time. And we saw, I don't know the extent of it now. And I, again, I was out at the hospital all day yesterday and I didn't really see. I know the Eagles beat the Packers. I also know Jordan Love was hurt. I don't know the extent of it right now. And I don't know if the news outlets are reporting the extent of it. But last play of the game, Jordan Love gets rolled up on, whether it's a knee, ankle, hoping obviously the best for him. But obviously injuries can happen at any time. But hopefully McCaffrey's coming off of a season where he was over like 320 touches total, getting Mason and possibly Guerrero more involved, especially if a game's out of reach or early down runs, not the worst thing in the world, right? Especially for a team looking for another deep Super Bowl playoff run. Other injuries being Yetur Gross-Matos, D. Winters. They did not practice, at least on Thursday. I'm not sure what happened Friday or if there's a practice today on Saturday. Aaron Banks, Isaac Guerrero, Talanoa Hufanga, and Juwan Jennings were all limited. Banks, finger, Guerrero, groin, Hufanga, knee, and Jennings, knee as well. I expect 3 of those 4 players to play, and Hufanga being the wild card. Since the Niners signed Tracy Walker to the practice squad, they could call him up as the 4th safety. Now, team captains were announced. Nothing surprising here. On offense, you have Brock Purdy, Trent Williams, Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, and George Kittle. On defense, it's Bosa and Warner. You can make a case, Charvarius Ward could have been a captain, Hufanga coming back off of the ACL reconstruction, but these are your core cornerstone players that you're obviously going to be building with, building around, playing with for the foreseeable future. Hopefully Williams this season, maybe 2 more. Deebo, who knows? I do believe Kittle and Warner, when it's all said and done next offseason, will get extended. And obviously Purdy, being in his early 20s, will be here for a while as well. So now let's get to the season outlook. And by season outlook, I just want to go through the roster. We'll get to games, and I'm not going to go game by game, but you guys will see what I'm doing with the game predictions. Let's go by positions and say if the Niners are better this year or last year. And I'm going to try to be as objective as humanly possible. Obviously, when you listen to the media, the Niners Super Bowl window is closing. They haven't been able to kick down the door the past 4 or 5 years from 2019 to 2023, 2 Super Bowl appearances, 2 more NFC Championship game appearances. They just haven't been able to get over the Patrick Mahomes hurdle, and not a lot of teams, as we saw on Thursday night with the Ravens, can do that. But this is a team that also turned over a lot of its roster. And you may not realize how much until I go through it, and was a top 3 roster last year and is still a top 3 roster. And it's how you want to maybe juggle. Do the Niners still have maybe the best roster in football or the best offensive roster in football with their skill position players and obviously a lot of stars on defense as well? I'm not going to quibble over 1, 2, or 3, but I think the demise of the 49ers, not that it's being shouted from the rooftops, but I think it's a bit exaggerated for the talent they have, the stars they have, the youth that they still have the roster, some of the youth that they brought in the draft and free agency. And again, draft picks, we have no idea coming off of preseason performance. It really means nothing how they're going to perform, but this is the season of optimism, right? And I am optimistic based on what I've seen so far of how the players will contribute, how they're going to fit, and how they may very likely take over for some established veterans and established Pro Bowl players in 2025, should those players move on. Now let's just go through the position. So quarterback, I think the Niners are better, if for no other reason than Brock's growth, right? No offseason program last season, recovering from the elbow, was rehabbing the elbow through the Philly game in November, we learned. He should be taking the next step. Remember, guys, it's not only, contrary to what the national media is saying, it's not only Jordan Love and CJ Stroud who are going to burst into superstardom. That's more of a projection because they are behind Brock in terms of playing time and actual success on the field, whether it's statistically or playoff success as well. Brock can grow too. Now, I'm not expecting him to throw 45 touchdowns this year. Let's not go nuts. He was, a little over 30 this past season and had, 11 or 12 interceptions. But there's room for growth. There's room for being more efficient. There's room for using his legs, picking up first downs. I'm not with Steve Young's assessment that there might be 30 or so yards on the ground each game that he can get, because that'll be around 400, rushing yards, which I don't think he's going to, get there. Excuse me, take a drink. But 15 to 20 a game, a couple first downs. If he runs for 20 a game, that's 320 rushing yards for the year, right? Or 340, That's pretty good for a quarterback that's not really mobile. That's like Patrick Mahomes rushing territory. You want to be mobile. You don't need to be a runner, but being mobile enough, feeling pressure, sliding up, moving around, something opens up in a gap or on the outside, second or third down, and you can pick it up with your legs and not force something into potentially tight window. It's living to fight another day, right? Getting a new set of downs. Behind Brock Purdy, Brandon Allen, the number 2, surprised me. Josh Dobbs, the number 3. Allen, Dobbs, or Sam Darnold, are we really kind of splitting hairs in terms of the benefit? But it's really Brock's growth that makes the QB position better than last year. And there's 2, so we're starting right off quarterbacks, 2 new players. 67% of the quarterback position is new. Running backs, I'm going to say the same, because McCaffrey had Offensive Player of the Year, and it's going to be tough to top that unless he wins that and MVP, right? But this year it's McCaffrey, Mason, Guerendo, and Taylor. So I'm going to say the same. Jordan Mason looking in the offseason and preseason like he's going to take that next step forward. Eli Mitchell on IR. Guerendo banged up a couple times in training camp or some strains. Hopefully he can get healthy. And Patrick Taylor, a serviceable number 3 if needed, but will be the game day inactives in favor of Mason and Guerendo. 2 new players here as well. So 50%, I know we're talking small numbers, but I like to use percentages to stress the difference. 50% new running backs on the roster. And you have an established veteran, McCaffrey, third-year veteran in Mason. I think same with Patrick Taylor. He might be his 4th year. And Isaac Guerendo, a rookie. So tight ends, I'm going to say better, even though I got the prediction wrong with Braden Willis and Cam Latu not making the team. It's Kittle, it's Sauber, and it's Jake Tonjes as your 3. And I think Sauber and Tonjes are an improvement over Braden Willis and Charlie Werner, who were the 3 on the roster last year after Cam Latu was put on season-ending IR. Now, Sauber or Tonjes may not be as strong of a blocker as Werner is, but better than Willis. And I think they add both individually and collectively more as a receiving threat than Willis or Warner or even combined. So I think this might be one of the better tight end groupings that the Niners have had, even though it was a bit surprising to some people. And I'm excited to see how this goes. They do have Mason Pline, the undrafted rookie out of Furman, on the practice squad. And Logan Thomas is still floating out there should they decide to bring a 4th tight end on the roster or sign him to the practice squad, even though Braden Willis and Mason Pline are on the practice squad, but there are still established veterans as free agents. The offensive line, I'm going to say same. You're going to have Williams, obviously, hopefully he gets back up to speed pretty quickly with his extended holdout. Aaron Banks, Jake Brendel, Dominic Pooney, and Colton McKivitz. Obviously, there's one change. Pooney for Feliciano/Burford. The backups right now, and I don't believe the Niners have released anybody, although, again, my day yesterday was taken up with family matters. Jalen Moore, Ben Barch, Nick Sakiel, Spencer Burford, and Brandon Parker recently re-signed as right tackle. So they have 10. I think numerically, unless I miscounted last podcast, that they have to let somebody go. And if they are at 53 already and Trent Williams makes it 54, I think one of the O-linemen is going to go. The line itself is just one. Right now it's 2 new players because they have 10. It's Dominic Pooney and Brandon Parker. Maybe it winds up being 2 new players and either a Barch or a Burford potentially gets let go. Zakiel, I think they keep because he is the backup center until Feliciano is healthy, which is still at least 4 weeks away at the bare minimum. So 2 of their 10 offensive linemen right now are new, so that's 20% turnover. To me, if they can get a good solid year out of Dominic Pooney, and he's played well in the off season, in the training camp and preseason, we'll see how much of an upgrade. He's definitely an upgrade over Spencer Burford already, but how much of an upgrade he is over John Feliciano to help solidify the right side of the line. But I'm going to say same for now. So on offense, you're talking 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 new players. Starters or backups. Actually, mainly all backups, sorry, except for Pooney. So 10 new players on the roster, one of which being a starter for the offensive squad. D-line, I'm going to say better. We know who they got. It's Bosa, it's Floyd, Gross-Matos, Beal at defensive end, Hargrave, Collins, Elliott, and Givens at D-tackle. 4 new players. Half of their line is new, or let's say a little bit less than half because they carried 9 toward the end of last year. I think Floyd and Gross-Matos are going to be a step up from Chase Young, who at least last year for the Niners was more name than game. Drake Jackson got hurt, missed time. Cleveland Farrell got hurt and missed time. So they're really trying to patch together that number 2 and 3 defensive end spots. Floyd to go for week 1. Gross-Matos might be held out. He didn't practice as of Thursday. If that's the case, someone like an Alex Barrett or Sam Okinanu, or the D end who was formerly of the Packers and the UFL may be called up for week 1 in addition to Beal. All 8 linemen are going to be active, and they turned over the defensive tackles, right? So Malik Collins and Jordan Elliott come in for Eric Armstead and essentially Javon Kinlaw. Armstead, this is based on projection and production. Hopefully Armstead has a healthy year for the Jaguars. I bear him no ill will. Kinlaw was healthy in the Niners for I think all of last season in a backup role, and the Niners are going to see him week 1 as a starter. But I'm excited about these 2 players. The Niners have 3 starting defensive tackles on their team, and they have 3 starting defensive ends on their team. People are worried about depth, and I have my hesitations as well, but what team has 4 starting caliber D ends and 4 starting caliber D tackles? Let's just keep that in mind. It's hard to build a roster of starters everywhere, including your depth, but I think the D line is better. Pass rush wise should be better. Hopefully they can get back to stopping the run. So close to 50% new on the D line. Linebackers, they're worse, right? You lose Dre Greenlaw, they're worse. It's just a matter of how much they can minimize that drop-off with Fred Warner, Devondre Campbell, Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles, D. Winters, Curtis Robinson, and Tatum Bethune. 3 new players at the position. So right now, half are new, right? It's Campbell. It's Robinson, even though he was on the practice squad. He didn't get called up really last year at all, I don't think. And a rookie in Tatum Bethune. Now, the lion's share of the snaps are going to go to Warner and Campbell. It's going to be probably a battle between Winters and Flanagan-Fowles for who's going to be the next tight end up off the bench. And the loser of that battle and Robinson will probably be special teams. I don't think Bethune will be active on game days if indeed he is the 6th linebacker. But 3 new there, 50%, and you have a veteran In Campbell, you have, I think, a third-year player in Robinson and a rookie in Bethune. So it's another position where they're kind of spanning the experience spectrum there. At linebacker and cornerback, Ward, Lenore, Yadam, Green, Rockyason, and Darrell Luter. It's been announced by Nick Sorensen that Ward and Lenore will start as their base 2 starting corners when teams go to nickel, which is extremely often. And this is the formation they will be in most often. It will be Ward and Yadam outside, Lenore in starting at nickel. So Green is going to be probably your first corner off the bench, probably outside, but maybe at nickel as well. Then probably Yasin, and then Luter, who has probably just only outside cornerback right now skills. 3 new players again, 50% new in the cornerback room. Safeties, I'm going to say same. You're going to get Huff, whether he's active for week 1 or week 2, but he's back. You have Jair Brown, year 2, taking a step forward. You have George Odom, got valuable snaps in the preseason and training camp as a starter, and Malik Mustafa, who I don't think they're going to call his number week 1 against the Jets if Hufunga's down. I think it will be Jair Brown and George Odom as starting. And hopefully I didn't say Lamar Odom. George Odom starting, but Mustafa, I think we've liked what we've seen in terms of a strong safety and a hitter. 1 new player there, so 25% new. So across your defense, you have 11 new players on the defense, and overall 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 14, 17, 20, 21 new players on a 53-man roster. Now, they're not all young and rookies. They're getting a good contribution from their rookie class this year for sure, or all rookies from the class making the team. And I think I might have skipped over wide receivers real quick. If I did, I'll make this quick. So B.A. Deebo, Jennings, Conley, Cowing, Bell, and Pearsall. Pearsall obviously on the non-football injury list, out for at least 4 years. Better depth when everybody's healthy than they've had the past couple years. The top 3 are going to remain the top 3. Conley will probably be active week 1, especially for special teams, but also being a trusted veteran. And Bell might be up as well, but certainly Cowing for punt return ability. The wide receivers are better. It may take a couple weeks for BA to get back into it with his extended holdout, but BA, I think a motivated Deebo in a contract year. Jennings, and you have a lot of familiar faces that have built chemistry already with Brock Purdy, but then you're bringing in an explosive player like Conley who adds some excitement and juice, punt returns as long as he's reliable. And when Pearsall's back, another explosive player who's getting 4 weeks to heal from the gunshot, but also 4 more weeks for the shoulder to get right as well. But 21 new players out of a 53-man roster. So you're talking 30, 35%, or about 40% new. That's good turnover while you're keeping your core players, or a whole lot of the core players, except for Armstead, really, and building your depth through free agency and the draft, and hopefully the draft representing that next generation of very good players to Pro Bowl caliber players that is obviously a bit away and remains to be seen. So to me, this is a better roster, than what they had last year. If it's, saying it's a better team, they got to put the pieces together, right? It's the Super Bowl hangover is usually, not 100% of the time, but the majority of the time, a real thing. They have to stay hungry. They have to stay with a chip on their shoulder. They have to hold off NFC teams that are on the come, the Lions, the Eagles, the Packers, the Cowboys. We'll see what the Falcons can do, the Rams. There are challengers, right? There are challengers, and they have some tough AFC games as well. So we'll see if the team is better. Maybe they don't get to 12-5 like they did last year. Maybe they are an 11-6 team or 10-7 at the worst, but they get hot at the right time and primed to make a deep run. Statistically, for what it's worth, I think outside of anybody getting injured, I think Brock's going to go over 4,000 yards again. He should be over 30 touchdowns. If he can keep the interceptions under 14, I think that'll be a very efficient year for him. I think McCaffrey, if they can spell him a bit more, I think he would go 1,250 on the ground, 450 through the air, looking around 15 total touchdowns. I think receiving, BA and Kittle both go over 1,000. And I think Deebo doesn't quite get there again in the air, but goes over 1,000 combined yards because they're still going to use him as a runner, especially if they're looking to spell McCaffrey. Not that it's an all hands on deck situation, but you're not going to not give Deebo a handoff during the course of the season. And I think the rookies, we're going to take into account Pearsall missing at least the first 4 games, but I think Pearsall and Cowling, if they can combine for 40 catches, because again, they're at the very best receiver number 4 on the team, and that's how Cowling's going to start off as week 1 starts behind your top 3 of Ayuk, Kittle, and Jennings. I'm sorry, Ayuk, Deebo, and Jennings. Then you have Kittle getting receptions. Then you have McCaffrey. Receptions are going to be hard to come by. So folks should temper their expectations on what Pearsall and Cowling are going to do, especially Pearsall, given the fact that he's out for the first 4 weeks. But I think a combined 40. Now remember, Juwan Jennings played all 17 games last season. I think he was active for that Ram game, week 18. He only had 19 receptions. So that's why I'm saying if they can both get to 20, I'm just making a parallel to what we saw the number 3 receiver do. That's 40 catches, but neither one of these receivers are going to be the number 3 receiver at any point in time unless there are injuries, which the Niners are known and prone to have. But I think, and that doesn't make Pearsall a bust. That doesn't make Cowling not valuable. Let's not go off of what we saw against the Ravens with the Chiefs, with Xavier Worthy with a couple touchdowns and over Rashee Rice. I don't know how he's allowed to play this season. Had a big game, and I know he's a second-year player. But let's all remember, though, Kyle with rookies. It's always been a little bit of a dicey situation. Dominic Pooney winning the right guard spot was really by default when you think about it. Is he talented? Yes. I'm not taking anything away from him. But he had no competition. Feliciano got hurt. Burford broke his hand and wasn't able to play in games or in camp for, a couple weeks, 2 or 3 weeks. Pooney played well enough to start. If he fell flat on his face and sucked, it would have been a different thing. He played well enough to start. And I know, the stats people are going to point to, only gave, I don't know if it was he or Jarrett Kingston, the 6th round pick who's now with the Panthers, how they gave up minimal to no pressures or sacks during their snaps in the preseason. If that meant so much, guys, Jarrett Kingston would not have been released. Let's take everything with a grain of salt. Who Pooney is going to see week 1 in Quinn Williams and others, Javon Kinlaw and others on the Jets defensive line, vastly different step up in competition than anything that he saw in the preseason. So let's stay on like the D line. Let's flip it around. I think Bosa ups his sack total from last year. I can see him having around 14. I can see Leonard Floyd benefiting from Bosa and vice versa. 9.5 sacks for Floyd. And I think Yetur Gross-Matos, when that knee gets right, I think about 5 sacks. And interceptions, I think your leaders are going to be Ward with 5, Lenore with 4, and Jair Brown with 3. Not to say Hufanga or any other players, linebackers aren't going to get any interceptions, but I'm just thinking about, your top corners and your at least top or healthiest safety, coverage safety at the moment. So I'm not going to give the Jets game away yet, but I think, and I did this when the schedule came out, but God knows I don't remember April or March, whenever that happened. So I went through it again. And I think this is a team that's going to be either 11-6 or 12-5. I think that's fair. Could they go 13-4, 10-7? Sure. If things break right, you can push that extra win. If there's injuries or some surprising upsets, I could see 10-7. Just because they're super talented on paper doesn't mean upsets can't happen. There's always games, every team, every year. You think they're going to win and they lose, or you think they're going to lose and they win. It just happens. But I looked at the schedule and just kind of went with, okay, let's start with the games and teams that they should beat. Here's my wins list. At Minnesota, at home for New England, at home for Arizona, at Tampa, at home for Seattle, at home for Chicago, at home for the Rams, and at Arizona. So that's 8 games, 8 wins. Now, are they all going to happen? Boy, I hope so. Would I be shocked if there's an upset somewhere? No, it's the NFL, the way the ball bounces, turnovers, inclement weather. Things can affect the outcome of games. But I think those are eight very, very winnable games. I think we can agree on that. Let me go with the loss list. And as much as I hate to say, I mean, none of us are going to say the Niners are going to win every game. Vegas has them favored in every game. I think they were favored in every game last year, but maybe the Eagle game. Doesn't really mean that. And they're favored in the Super Bowl, right? Doesn't mean really anything, especially when you're projecting favorites before preseason, before rosters are settled, before games start, before there are injuries, things that can adjust point spread so much. But I'm marking down losses right now, unfortunately, at home against the Chiefs. You know, they got to beat them until I feel otherwise. Do I think they can beat them this year? Yeah. And when we get to that game, may I change this prediction? Sure. Hey, Patrick Mahomes may be hurt. They might miss Mahomes and Kelsey and Pacheco. Who knows, right? But until they beat them, I'm going to pick the Chiefs. And at Buffalo, that's a nighttime game in December. The Niners can run the ball. They play physical. It's not like they're going to wilt. But I think that Bills game could be very tough, and I'm going to count it as a loss. Teams are going to beat the Niners, right? It's just a matter of who. And then the toss-up games, right? The games that can go either way. Week 1 against the Jets, at the Rams, at Seattle, at home for Dallas, at Green Bay, at Miami, and Detroit. That's 7 toss-up games. So if you want to, play it conservatively or at least me mathematically, you want to split it down the middle, that's 3.5 losses. They can't have half a loss. So you could say either 3 losses or 4 losses. So if I have them losing at the Chiefs and at home at the Chiefs and at the Bills, 3 losses brings them to 12-5. 4 losses from those toss-up games brings them to 11-6. I thought 11-6 or 12-5 originally before I went through the schedule. Then I remember this is what I did in terms of checking my work, and it feels right. Again, there's going to be surprise wins for the Niners or a comeback, or definitely there's going to be a surprise loss, right? Upsets happen to every team, every season. But this is how I see it playing out. And again, if the Niners can go 12-5 again or 11-6, I think that'll be good enough to win the West. Is it going to be good enough to get the number 1 seed? Well, the way the Eagles looked and the Packers week 1, and it's just week 1. Let's not overreact to that. Jordan Love's injury is going to have a big say for that. How quickly the Eagles implement Saquon Barkley. And he had a great first game, right? 2 or 3 touchdowns. Jalen Hurts still throwing like weird cross-body high school type throw picks. But how they can adapt to Kellen Moore's offense and Vic Fangio's defense. They'll be battling. They'll be right there with Dallas battling for the top spot in the NFC East. And you obviously have the Cowboys. You have the Lions to worry about. The Lions have gotten better. And they see Detroit in December. I think it's a Monday night game in Santa Clara. So Niners are geared for it, right? They're pumped up for it. They have just as good of a chance of get the number 1 seed as anybody in the conference, and they have just as good a chance as representing the NFC. Even if everybody stays healthy on every team, the roster is so good, so many stars, so many All-Pros, so much more growth in the younger players like Purdy. If you're anticipating Stroud and Love taking a step forward, you cannot say differently about Brock. That even though this team might be, 11-6 or 12-5, say same record or a game worse, they could be a better team. Possible. Defensively, let's get back to stopping the run. Let's start dictating their will and playing much more downhill. And it starts week 1, Monday night, hosting the Jets. When the line came out, when the schedule was announced, the Niners were a 6-point favorite. It's down to, depending on where you look, 4, 4.5, 3.5. Guys, this is a talented team. This is a very talented team in a very difficult AFC and a difficult AFC East with the Bills and Dolphins. And it starts with Rodgers. If he plays more than 4 snaps, if he plays more than 4 games, if he plays the whole season, this is a team that's going to make the playoffs. They have a very good chance, or maybe a better chance than any team in the division to win the division. The defense is top notch. It's going to be a top 3 unit all season. They can stop the run. They can get after the quarterback, and they can lock down with their corners the best cornerback trio in the NFL. Starts offensively, though. They rebuilt the offensive line. 3 new starters, 2 new tackles, and Tyron Smith from Dallas and Morgan Moses. They also brought John Simpson in at left guard from the Ravens. Mike Williams, a free agent addition from the Chargers. He is working his way back from a torn ACL. He will be on a snap count week 1. You still have rookie Malachi Corley to join Garrett Wilson and Alan Lazard, who you have to figure will have a bounce back year under Rodgers versus the garbage that they were trotting out at quarterback last season. And Breece Hall at running back, strong bounce back season from the torn ACL. He's a top 5 running back in the NFL. If that line can give him space, the presence of Rodgers and those receivers is going to give him space, and catching the ball out of the backfield. Top 5 all-around back in the NFL. This is a team that can put up points. They can stop teams from scoring. This is a very difficult matchup for San Francisco week 1. And it's early in the season, so you know that defenses are going to be ahead of offenses, unless you're the Packers and the Eagles, when you put up 65 total points on a field where everybody apparently was slipping. Was not great footing, but both teams had to play on it right, and you had to make adjustments. But I think this is a team where, as many snaps as Rodgers took in training camp, he didn't play in preseason, but living in the Northeast, listening to sports talk, he took 800 snaps with the offense. Now, what that means when there's no live rush coming after him, where he has to plant and maybe run and use some mobility to sidestep pressure, different animal when you know the bullets are actually flying during a game and people are coming to tackle you with bad intentions. But it's going to start and end with Rodgers, and the undercard right there is the O-line, because you know the skill positions are very good, and you know the defense is elite. I mentioned the best cornerback trio in the league in Sauce, former Niner and Seahawk DJ Reed, and Michael Carter II, who recently got a contract extension from the Jets. They have very good linebackers in CJ Mosley and Quincy Williams. And the D-line, Quinnen Williams is obviously the biggest name that jumps out, but then not many other proven players as starters or key players, especially with Hassan Reddick still holding out, and he's not going to be playing week 1 per Robert Saleh. Defensive tackles joining Quinnen Williams, you have former 49er Javon Kinlaw starting. And listen, he was healthy last year, and this is a revenge game for him. You know he's going to want to show out against his former team and prove that not bringing him back, although the Niners were not going to match what the Jets did salary-wise, that it was a mistake. Same with Solomon Thomas, former 49er. He's been with the Jets for a couple of years. Went over when Robert Saleh took over 2 years ago as the head coach. And at D ends, without Reddick, you have Jermaine Johnson in his 3rd year out of Florida State. Michael Clemens, I think in his 3rd year out of Texas A&M. You have Will McDonald, 2nd year out of West Virginia, and Tack McKinley, who's actually not in the NFL last year. So I think Jermaine Johnson, might have had 8 or so sacks. Michael Clemens, I think maybe around 4 or 5 last year. Will McDonald, I think, had 3. They can get after the quarterback, but you don't have, without a Reddick, you don't have a Reddick or you don't have a Bosa type player. Ken Williams with no training camp, and obviously Colton McKivitz hand up against the rush. When you know Williams is going to get a push inside, you know Kinlaw, for as uneven as his play has been, he's a big-ass, strong dude. He's going to get a push. And you know the corners, the secondary, is going to play like the Ravens did last Christmas night, like the Chiefs did when they adjusted. They're going to play man. They're not going to play man exclusively, but they will play a lot of man. They will challenge these receivers. They'll play press man, disrupt the timing of this offense for Deebo, Ayuk, Jennings, and others to not get a free release. And these corners, Purdy and Kyle, need to show that they can beat man consistently. Brock was a very good quarterback in the regular season against man coverage. The anomaly games were, and he might have been the number one against, he was number one beating the blitz. He might have been number one against man or zone defense. I know he's number one against one of those, but the Super Bowl is still fresh in a lot of people's minds, as is the Christmas game. And that's why the former defensive coordinator of the Ravens going over to Seattle, he's going to bring that philosophy. And I don't think Seattle is going to be a walkover this year. They'll probably finish third in the West, but they have personnel that can match up against the Niners like the Ravens did on defense, like the Chiefs did with McDuffie and Snead, who's now with Tennessee or Indianapolis. He's in that, I think, Tennessee. And like the Jets obviously have with Sauce, with Reed, and with Michael Carter. Force feed Kittle this game. They didn't do it in the Super Bowl. And whether Kittle was swallowed up by whoever was playing him man, or if they were playing, zone on Kittle behind any sort of man they were playing on the outside receivers, it was great to see Kittle go over 1,000 yards, receptions. He had a bounce back year from the past couple. But he's a player, and I think it was one of the Kelsey brothers saying, I don't know if it was Travis or Jason, that they were surprised they didn't go through Kittle more, that the offense runs best through Kittle. The offense, that's their opinion. The offense runs best through McCaffrey. I mean, he is, in a way, the engine that opens everything up, running and passing, right? You can't say it goes through Deebo. I don't think you can say it goes through Ayuk. It either goes through a tight end or a running back, which is interesting given how a lot of other teams are structured. You can say the offense in Miami goes through Tyreek Hill or Justin Jefferson in Minnesota, maybe Jamar Chase in Cincinnati when he signs. And then the offense in Kansas City has gone through Travis Kelce for a lot of years, with him being 35 now. Maybe that does transition to Pacheco or Rashee Rice. Kelce is going to have an impact. But Kittle graded out as the number one tight end last year per Pro Football Focus. I think it's okay to force feed him, not if someone else is wide open. You're not trying to make some sort of a stubborn, adamant point about it. But he can't come out against the Jets, again, a very good defense, but he can't come out and have a 2-catch performance like he did in the Super Bowl. Got to have at least 4 or 5, at least. Run it 30 times. I mean, I think as good as the Jets defense is, they're a better pass defense than a run defense. So if you want a 3-headed monster with McCaffrey, Mason, and Guerendo, and you want to pound that rock 30 times, and if you want to say 15 to 18 with McCaffrey, maybe Mason gets close to 10 and maybe 5-ish for Guerendo, pound that front. McCaffrey's not a battering ram. Mason sort of is, and Guerendo's a blend of power and speed. Even run it if you're not getting the yards per carry you want. You don't want to be one-dimensional. You don't want to turn into a predictable offense where defensive coordinator Jeff Ulbrich knows passes coming more often than not, and he adjusts his coverages or disguises his coverage accordingly. And you want to make sure play action is a thing. To me, I'm a firm believer that play action is a thing, even if you're not running it well, especially if it's taking more than just the D-line, to get stops. It means committing linebackers to run defense and maybe bringing a safety down, because they know, every team knows, that Kyle loves to run the ball. So if the Niners have 20 rushes for 65 yards, volume still is important to keep the defense honest and make play action a legitimate threat. Defensively, what will Sorensen draw up? Is he going to be more all gas, no brakes? Is he going to simplify the defensive coverages on the back end and give the D-line, again, more of the abilities to win their one-on-one matchups, so their back-end counterparts kind of know what to expect? I don't think Steve Wilkes confused anybody in the backfield. I think he was probably trying to confuse quarterbacks, and he drew up a really good scheme for the first 2.5 quarters of the Super Bowl. And then just, Patrick Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes. You're not going to keep him down like you're not going to keep Brady down or Montana down all 4 quarters. Eventually they figure it out. Peyton Manning, Drew Brees, others. But what is he going to draw up? how often or how viciously and quickly are they going to test that O-line? Obviously, with a 4-man, you test it every play, right, with a 4-man rush. But is he going to disguise a blitz? How often are they going to bring 5 or 6? How often are they going to play man up on these big receivers? I mean, Garrett Wilson's 6'1". Alan Lazard's big, 6'4". Mike Williams, same thing, 6'4". Big receivers outside of Trevarius Ward. Lenore's 5'10". Yadam's big, 6'1", 6'2". Green about 6 feet tall. Can they force Rodgers into issues? Can they get sacks? Can they get pressure? Force turnovers? See how good this new revamped O-line is, whether you're doing it with 4, 5, or 6. The run D, we saw it get gashed for the better half of last year and through the playoffs. Played somewhat better in the Super Bowl, but the first 2 playoff games, not good. Can they tighten that up? Limit Breece Hall? Dual threat? Make Rodgers, a 40-year-old Rodgers coming off of an Achilles surgery. I think he'll be just as mobile as he was before, and he was never the most mobile. I'm not going to buy into, well, the Achilles, he's probably going to slow down. I got to see it first. So I'm going to go into this, and I'm sure coaching staff's going to go into this believing that they're going to be facing vintage MVP caliber Aaron Rodgers, because you wouldn't game plan any other way. But if the run defense is better, can you hold them to under 100 yards rushing the ball? It's Rodgers' first live action in 20 months, or real full game action. He did play a year ago, but that was 4 snaps. But assuming he stays healthy, and hopefully he does, no one's hoping for injury by any means. But first full game action in 20 months. It's on the road. There's no Hassan Reddick. Their number 2 receiver in Mike Williams isn't 100%. If Lazard starts, I don't know if there's going to be a significant drop off. I mean, Williams is the more talented receiver, but the chemistry and experience he has with Rodgers at quarterback means something. On the Niners side, you have the late arrival by Ayuk and Williams. How is that going to impact their conditioning? How polished will they be in their respective positions? You have CM McCaffrey's calf or Achilles that hopefully is not a thing, but it's on the injury report. And then you have the DNs, the depth with Gross Matos still being up in the air to play on Monday night. And who would they call up so they have 4 pass rushers on the field? You flip it around on offense. Let's just highlight Brock, right? This is Brock's first real game action since the Super Bowl, where Brock acquitted himself. Touchdown, no interceptions, gave his team a chance to win it, gave the lead late in the 4th, gave the lead in overtime. 4th quarter, Chiefs matched the touchdown, matched the field goal, and in overtime, obviously, they scored the touchdown. So we could say Brock did what he needed to do. He didn't punt. There was no punting involved in not giving his team a chance to score. And we know about the blitzes and offensive breakdowns in pass protection that could have prevented a win. We will never know for certain, especially in overtime, that miss on Chris Jones, Brandon Ayuk being wide open. Remember, the Chiefs would have gotten a crack at the ball, and who knows if they would have scored and gone for 2. We just don't know. Brock wants to be more aggressive. I applaud that. I think the offense as a whole is more aggressive to me than the defense. And Shanahan sometimes borderlines that aggressive. It's that borderline between aggressive and reckless, or sometimes stupid, getting away from the run. And again, it doesn't have to be McCaffrey running it. You still have Mason as a very strong number 2. But Brock, if you want to be more aggressive against this defense, and I know he said he wants to come out and not feel like they're taking their foot off the gas and giving teams life and turning 3rd downs into 1st downs, putting more points on the board, really stepping on a team's neck. And I want to see that too. And I want to see defenses step on another team's necks, plural, offensively, when they're up 7, 10, 13, 17. Strip sack, pick 6. I know these are things that don't happen all that often, but exert your will. Don't let the team breathe. Don't let the team give a chance to come back. But again, with aggressiveness for Brock and the offense, sometimes if you're up by a score or 2, the best play is a throwaway and a punt. Don't give a team life by making a difficult throw, by running around, throwing across your body, being too confident. While I like the mentality, there are times to be aggressive. And I want to see this team be aggressive for nearly all 60 minutes, right? It's just hard to say. There are down and distances and times, like, 3rd and 25, you're probably handing it off or throwing a screen or doing something conservative. But against this defense, if you're up or even if you're down, you don't want to give them life. If you're up, you don't want to give them life and a chance, because now you're dealing with Rodgers. You're not dealing with Garrett Wilson or whoever their backup situation was, whoever else their backup situation was, not Garrett Wilson, Zach Wilson, excuse me, Trevor Siemian. You're dealing with a legit quarterback that can turn a turnover into, 3 or 7 quickly. It's okay to protect the ball. Getting a lead, extending a lead, going from 10 to 17 is huge, right? That's 2 scores to 3 scores. But there is the fine line between aggressive and reckless that against a team like this can burn them. And I don't want to see a stupid play in their own end or in the red zone or scoring zone or while they're driving that prevents the Niners from getting or extending a lead where something a bit more judicious would have sufficed. Now, week one, anything can happen, right? I said before the defenses are going to be ahead of the offense. I think a very weird thing, I would love to see Ricky Pearsall come out with the flag, get that team fired up, rallied around him. I'm not using the injury or the shooting as that they should use it for motivation, but what the hell, man? Like a couple more inches any which way in his chest and he might have died. I think there's an energy. I think opening up on Monday Night Football, opening up against a team that knows they want to show that they're legit. That last year they were still a competitive team for a lot of games. I mean, they were close against the Chiefs. They beat the Eagles without a quarterback, without a viable quarterback. They were in a lot of games. And if you have now, obviously, a future Hall of Famer, 2-time or 3-time MVP, this is a very good Jets team. This is a big litmus test type of game for both sides. And I think the defense is going to corral both offenses. I'm not sure what the over-under is. I would take it unless the over-under is 36.5, because I have the Niners winning 20-17. Now, if the Niners go in there and blow the doors off, awesome. If the Jets come out, squeak out a win, all right, it's week 1. If the Jets blow the doors off, our conversations on Tuesday are going to be very different. And there is going to be panic time in Ninerville. But I think the experience, how much the offense has gelled, and are building upon what they did last year. Remember, it's an offense with 2 MVP candidates in Purdy and McCaffrey and an offensive player of the year in McCaffrey. The defense for the 49ers is the wild card with a new coordinator and how he's going to dial stuff up. First time calling plays in a real game against a Hall of Fame quarterback and a very good offense. Flip side, the offense and especially the line is the wild card for the Jets. So the strengths are going against each other. The Niner O and the Jets D. The slight question marks, independent of the talent on the field on each squad, it's how it's going to come together. The Jets O and the Niners D, the question marks are going against each other. I have the Niners winning by 3, right around the point spread, whatever it may have been. 3, 3.5, 4, 4.5. I think it's going to be a 1-score game. So that's going to conclude the podcast for today on Saturday. If you're listening today, again, as always, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to make us part of your listening routine. College football on today. Pro football started Thursday and Friday. Full slate of games on Sunday, concluding with what we've all been waiting for. The Niners kicking off the season at home on Monday Night Football, primed to hopefully make another run at that elusive 6th championship. Enjoy your football weekend, whatever else you are doing. And until we talk again, stay happy, stay healthy, and stay safe. Take care, everybody.